In this tutorial, you will learn how to create an interactive Halloween card. So we need to click on this template, 3D animated poster. With this template, we don't have to start from scratch. Okay, now we have it available. So you can see that we already have the fixed target tracker available. This will help track the card. So what we need to do is to replace the texture for this target tracker mesh. So we can right click and replace. And we want to find the assets we have available, which is the Halloween card. Okay, so now it changes to the Halloween card. So the next thing it directs you to do is basically create a null object, which you can consider this as like a folder that contains all the things beneath it. So it also, the children of this folder with this null object will change when you move this null object. So what we want to do is we don't need this object anymore, so we click on it and then delete it, and then we want to add our own object. So there are multiple ways to add objects in Spark AR. So you can choose from your computer if you download a 3D objects from an online platform, or you have something created of your own, or you can search AR library. So the first thing we want to do is to import from the computer, and we want to import from this skeleton model that we downloaded from Sketchfab, and we want to find the .fbx file and import it here. And you see that it imported the object, the mesh object, and also the animation and two materials, but it doesn't have the texture. So if I drag this object here, we want to drag it as a child of this null object. So we want to make sure, for example, if I close it, it's part of this null object. So this way, if I control this, I control this skeleton as well. Okay, so now you see if I drag the simulator a bit larger, I can use the move tool here to move it around. Basically what I want is to move it right next in front of the skeleton on the picture, and I also want to scale it up a little bit and to make sure that it's sort of matching the background. So the effect will be that when I scan this card, the skeleton will appear. But you see that there's no texture on the skeleton, which is different from the original model. That's because I don't have the texture imported. So what I will do is I will import the skeleton's pictures with textures, which are these four. However, the thing with importing from outside is that you need to know which texture is connected to which material. It's not bundled together, so you have to do it yourself. So I want to find this skeleton material and find the texture for the skeleton, and I believe it's this. You can also try yourself if you're not sure which one would work, and you see this color one works, and the other ones you can apply to, but certain textures are not useful as others. So for this one, just apply this color is enough. And also for Spark AR, the more textures, the higher resolution the texture is, the more the bigger file size the project will be, and there are certain limits on the project files when you need to publish it to Facebook or Instagram. So I recommend keeping it minimum. So this one texture is enough. Okay, so I can zoom in a little bit so I can see things a little bit better. I can also use the second button on the mouse, which is on the right side, and when I click and then drag, I will be able click and move, I will be able to see different perspective And for example, if I want to see if it's too far away from the card, what I can do is I can select the model and move it back a little bit. And again, I want to size it up a little bit and move it down to align with the card. Okay, so I'm fine with this. So this another way of importing 3D objects is through AR library. So what I can do is I can search the AR library. So if you find that the AR library is not shown, what you can do is you can close it down and restart it. That should solve the problem. And now let me open recent and choose the project. Okay, now I have it available here, and let's try it again. Add assets, search AR library. Now the AR library is working. What we want to do is I want to find a spider because on the background of the card there's a web here. I want it to feel like that spider suddenly shows up on the web. So there are tons of things available, and I kind of like this one with the web, and I want to import this one. Okay, so once it's imported, it's here, spider together. Again, it has the object, has the materials and the textures, but the good thing with importing from Spark AR directly is that it's all bundled together. For example, if I put the spider here, you can see that it has all the textures appear here without me linking the texture to the material. So that's great. But seems like when I drag the spider here, I drag it probably inside the skeleton. So I want to undo by using Command Z or Control Z on Windows. And I want to drag it inside this drag here. So now it showed up correctly here. And looking like it's not, the rotation of the spider is not right. So I want to rotate it vertically, like a 90 degree. And then I want to put it, select the spider, move it forward, and move it on the left side to more or less be on the same level as the web, original web. Okay, I want it to be on the same level as this skeleton. Okay, that looks good, and I want to scale it down a little bit. Okay, so this looking good on the simulator. Let me drag it to make it bigger. Okay, so this is how you can import the 3D objects, and then what we can do next is you see that the skeleton has an animation. So we want to play that animation. It's basically a walking cycle of the skeleton. So to do that, first of all, you need an asset called Animation Playback Controller. This thing, when you add it, you can rename it, but I will just leave it as it is. And you can choose the animation clip to play. And you see that the take one is the only animation we have here, and it's part of the skeleton. So we choose this take one. And you can also choose whether you want to play it immediately, whether you want to loop the animation, what's the speed. But you see that it's not currently playing because you have a animation playback controller, but it's not connected to this skeleton object. So what you need to do next is go to the skeleton and find this animation. You see that there's no controller currently set here. So once we have the controller created, we can link it to the animation controller we have. So if you have multiple ones, you can link it to different objects. So that's how it works. So now you see the animation is working, and if I don't do loop, it will stop after playing the animation. So I want to keep looping, and I can make it really fast or slow, but I want to change it back to its original speed. I like it. So that's how to do animation here. Next, let's see how we can add some 3D text. That's another type of 3D object. to do that, we can go to Add Object, 3D Text, and insert. There are also 2D text available, but here we want to make it more fun. So we have the Happy Halloween. We want to have a 3D text of the Happy Halloween shown here. I think that's more interesting. So we can move it back a little bit in front of the two objects, and we can change it to Happy Halloween. And then we can move it to the middle. And you can change all sorts of property, like the depth will basically make it a deeper if you change it, but I kind of like the current depth. You can also change the scale just like a regular 3D object. You can also change the letter spacing, line spacing. I think it looks good to me just like this. And then all the text has material too, but it separates into front, back, and side material. So the next thing we want to do is, and now currently they all connect to the same material, material 0. So I want to change the material to another color, maybe orange. So I want to find an orange that I like dark orange. You see that both the side, back, and front all changed. If you want to have a different color for the side or the back, you can do that by creating a new material like this, and maybe I can call it like a back material, and you can give it a different color. Let's say if we want to give it a light orange, we can do that. And to see the effect, now we rotate to the back, and we can go to the 3D text. When we added the 3D text, it's actually added to the camera. So one thing we need to do is move the 3D text to the fixed target tracker, not within the spider, but here. Because otherwise, if it's under the camera, then when the camera moves, it will move with the camera, and that's not the effect we want. What we want is it stays with the target tracker position. See that when I change it, I also change the position, so I will move it up a little bit like this. Okay, so when we click on 3D text, we can find out the material. Let's change the back material to the back material we just created. And you see that it changed to a light color. So just to compare, this is the original one, and this is the back material. So you can control that. So that's how you can create a 3D text. And next, we can add a little bit more fun by adding some interactions. So to do that, you need to open your patch editor, go to the workspace, click on the patch editor. So you have the patch editor visible here. The kind of interaction I want is when the user tap the screen, I want the skeleton to laugh. That's the first one. And another one is I want to be able to resize the spider by pinching the screen. So let's see how we can do that. So to add some sound, we can first learn how to add sound before we get to the patch editor. What we first need is a speaker that can be used to play the sound. Again, you can place the speaker anywhere. Basically, the sound will be played here. And because it's three-dimensional space, so you can say where the speaker is. I want to place the speaker again inside the target tracker, so it's not moving with the camera, and I want it to be placed somewhere around the skeleton, because it's the laugh coming out of the skeleton. Okay, so next thing is if you click on speaker, then you need to have either you can choose a microphone or external source, but the same as animation player, we want to have something called the audio playback controller. This will control how you play the audio, and then we need to have the audio clip, so we can find the audio clip. And just to be mindful that you need the .m4a type to be imported, at least for the Mac version of Spark AR Studio. And also the sample rate should be 44K. This seems to be working for across different devices. And sometimes I see problems with other types of sample rate not playing on Instagram or some other, or Facebook. So this may be the reason. You want to make sure the sample rate is right. And you also want to set it to mono, then stereo. That's another thing that I learned through reading online forum. So once you have that, you can also import audio directly from the AR library. You can find the music and sound, and these should be optimized for Spark AR, so you can search for different audios. So I already have my prepared. So now if I again, I can control whether I want to play immediately or whether I want to loop it, but it's not playing because the speaker is not connected to the audio control player. So what we want to do is find the audio player controller. So now it's playing, but it's kind of annoying because it's playing constantly. So I don't want to loop it, and now it stops once it plays. So that's how you add some sound to make it more fun. And like I said, I want to have some interactions. Basically, when I tap the screen, it will play the laugh. So it's not too annoying when it's constantly playing. So for the patch editor, you right click to choose a different type of a patch editor. And I want to find a screen tap. So you can click this. Okay, I think now I don't want to play it just in case it's randomly playing. So when I have the screen tab enabled, basically screen tab can also detect the 2D positions of where you tapped, but what we want is the gesture state, basically whether it's tapped or not. So that will give us a type called the Boolean type, like a true or false. So the next thing we want to do is we want the speaker to we want the audio to play, so we want to go to the audio player, and when you see this little arrow, you can click and add it to the patch editor. That means these can be manipulated using the patch editor. So I click on this and now have the audio playback controller. So what we can do is when it's when it's tabbed, I want to play. And the patch editor is pretty smart. It will generate something in between called a switch to make sure that the logic is right. So basically when it's tapped, I will play, and it tapped again, I will turn it off. So that's the logic of a switch. It's like a light switch, you can think of it that way. So now to test whether this works, what we can do is go to the simulator, and we can use to simulate touch, and this way when we touch, you see it's playing, right? And I can like it to loop, so when I touch, so it's keep laughing, and when I tap, you see that suddenly stops. So this is how the screen tap works. So this is the first interaction we added. And before we go into the next interaction, another thing I want to teach you to do is how to add a particle system. So we can add some like a firefly effect on the background. So let's go to object. We can find the particle system and choose insert, and it's called emitter here. We can just call it firefly And then for now, again, it's attached to the camera. I don't want it to be attached to camera. I want it to be under the fixed target tracker. And you see that it's a list of particles, but currently there's no textures on it, so you don't see any images or textures. So there are so many things you can change, like the position, scale, rotation. But what I want to do is change the type to rain. This way it will be emitting not from a single point, but from like a rain, within a rain type. So I want to increase the radius a bit bigger. So this way you can see that it feels like it's everywhere. And you can also change the speed. I can increase the speed a little bit so it's faster. And then I want to choose texture for this. So what I need to do is to create a material. For now, it doesn't have any material, so I want to create a new material. And I want to change the name of the material. If I right click to rename it to particle material. And then for the material, I want to choose the texture. So I want to find the new texture. This is the texture that I provided. And now you can see that it feels like a fire fly kind of particle effect. Okay, and you see some interesting like red, white patches. I find this a simulator issue. If you test it on your phone, it doesn't have that. It's probably because there's a background, and so somehow it creates this weird effect. So to add to this interaction, what we want is, I don't want to have this effect appear all the time. I want to make it a surprise when people tap the screen. So again, what you can do is you can control the visibility using the patch editor. The same logic, when user tap, I want it to have the firefly shown. So now if I simulate this, so I click again and disappeared. Okay, so we finished the first interaction and also added particle system. The next interaction we want is I want to be able to use screen pinch to control the size of the spider. So we could search pinch and we find the screen pinch. And the same logic is we want to use the gesture, instead of using the gesture state, we want to use the scale this time and use the scale to control the scale of the spider. So we need to go to the spider, find the spider object. See the firefly is not underneath the drag here, so I move it back and go to spider, and we want to control the scale of the spider, so we click it here. And if we want to link the scale to the spider directly, we can't do that because if you click on it, it's not the same type of data. And this is the scalar data, and this is the vector 3. So we somehow need to change the type of the data. And fortunately, we have something called the pack. This will pack this type of data into a vector 3 type. So you see that the output is a vector. So what we want to do is use the same scale to control both the X, Y, and Z. So basically, if it pinches to 2, let's say, then these will all change to 2, and this will uniformly change all the X, Y, and Z scales on the spider. So this way, when we pinch, we can change the size of the spider, and there's no error anymore. So we can see it's working right now, and it seems like after we did this, the original scale becomes larger because the default set becomes 1 instead, and that's fine. And we want to test it by going to test on device, and again, that you can choose this. And you can choose a send to app, but this is more troublesome that you can use a link to use your Facebook camera or Instagram camera to test. But here I want to use the Spark AR player. And you see that if I don't have the Spark AR player open up, it has an issue. So what you want to do is make sure your Spark AR app is open, and then click send. And you see when I have the ready, it's working, and I can see the spider. And when I tap, I definitely see the particle system, but I don't hear the sound. And I find this issue with the Spark AR player. The sound is not playing, but if you use the Instagram camera, it's definitely working. So now I use my pinch to zoom it in and zoom it out. Then I can control the size of the spider. So it's working. So let's see if we use the Instagram. If I send to the Instagram camera and test the sound and see whether it's working. Okay, seems like the effect is too big, so we can't really test it on the Instagram camera. So you can use the Facebook camera if you want. In the Instagram seems to have limit of 4 megabytes, so you have to make your textures smaller somehow to make it fit. So let's try the Facebook camera. So while we're waiting, we can see the assets, how big the assets are by going here. You can see that the assets is 4.6 or even 6.1 for older Android. So that means it can work on Instagram. So what you can do is you can find some of the textures that you don't need and delete the textures, because if you don't need them in the project, then delete them to decrease the file size. So I will do that. Delete the unused ones, and this one I don't need it. So is this. Okay, and this time you see that I think now we're still a little bit over. And what you can do next is maybe delete some of the spider texture, or you can compress some of the original image, but I think this is already very small. So let's see if it's ready. Okay, here's the link. Okay, with the link, then I can test. I can open Facebook camera to test the effect. And I want to hear the sound, so we'll do that. So you see that with the Facebook camera, I can only see things. And when I tap, the sound is definitely working. And when I pinch, I can zoom in and I can resize the spider. Okay, so great, it's working. Okay, so this concludes the tutorial on how to use the fixed target tracker to create an interactive Halloween card. We talked about how to import 3D objects, 3D text, how to add a particle system, how to use the patch editor to add some interactions to make it fun. Hope you enjoy it.